Women and children are 14 times more likely than men to receive fatal casualties when disaster strikes. The 8-week torrential downpours and flash flooding in Pakistan, or as it has been trending, monsoon on steroids, wrought havoc affecting over 33 million people and resulting in more than 1,100 casualties nationwide. When a disaster of such epic proportion strikes, women young children are most susceptible to the effects of such a disaster. That brings us to today's discussion on disproportionate suffering of Pakistani women in the flood-struck Indus Basin. My name is Simra Abbas, and I'm your today's host. That brings us to the introduction of our panelists. But before that, I regret to inform you that Dr. Filza and Kainat Saif couldn't join us today. With that, I would like to introduce our speaker, Zainab Zahid. All right, we have our other speaker as well, Kainat Saif, on with us on the live. I would like to introduce Zainab Zahid. Zainab is a community organizer, a published researcher, and a climate action advocate. She is a seasoned youth engagement specialist and is engaged in climate action in national and international spaces. Zainab has represented Pakistan at the COP26 and served as a regional coordinator, North Central and South Asia, in addition to her active role in delegate relations team during COY 16. Currently, she is working as a regional youth focal point, Central and South Asia, at the United Nations International Federation of Youth, where she is working on developing a youth development plan on water and climate that would serve as a major input for United Nations 2023 Water Conference. Welcome, Zainab.
Hi, Shimra. Thank you so much for the very kind
Hello.
introduction.
Now, I would like to introduce Kainat Saif, our other speaker for today's discussion. Kainat is a youth parliamentarian at Pakistan Institute of Legislative Development and Transparency. Hello, Kainat. How are you?
Hello, Assalamu alaikum. I am good. Thank you for asking. I hope you all are doing well.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for asking. Since these floods have caused such a destitute in the entire country, but it has affected women and young children more than any other member of the community. Keeping in women's role in mind in the social and domestic fabric, mainly as primary caregivers, do you believe women in rural areas have been disproportionately impacted due to floods? In what ways do you think, and why? Zainab, you can go first.
Thank you so much for your question, Shimra. I think, yeah, definitely women in the rural areas have been disproportionately impacted by the floods because if we see like our social traditional setup, especially in the rural areas, women are mostly confined to their houses, and they are involved majorly in the domestic issues in a way that they will be looking after their kids, and they will be involved in house chores, and not very socially involved in the things outside of their homes. And also, if we see their role in supporting homes, they might be involved in the farming practices and helping their husbands, or traditionally working in the farms, going back home, working in their home. So this cycle particularly continues when we see a life of a traditional woman in Pakistan. And after the floods, since it involves like migration, because they don't now have homes, they have to move out with their kids. They have to take care of themselves as well as their families. They have to cook food even in that condition, right? So we see that there are women who are pregnant. There are women who are like lactating mothers, and then women also go through like menstrual cycle, which is like an additional hustle for them to manage in that condition, which many people don't understand. So these all factors, I think, inclusively make the situation very hard for a woman. Definitely, it's hard for everyone, because disasters don't segregate between a men and a woman or gender. We talk about when we talk about it in general. But definitely, women face more hardships when we compare it to men, and I think all these factors contribute a lot to the marginalization of women under these circumstances.
Right. Um, Kainat, same question for you.
All right, thank you for your question. And I think when a country or community is hit by a natural disaster such as floods, so the disaster of such an epic proportion, it is imperative, it is very important actually to draw the attention to the plight of most vulnerable and most susceptible plus marginalized member of the community, that is women and young children, young girls, that they are very very important because they are hugely involved in all of these in the disasters, and mainly their reproductive health is compromised because they have to go through the menstrual cycle. And other than that, many women, we see that even in the flooding times, they were pregnant, and there is zero to no rehabilitation for that women, and their reproductive health that was hugely compromised. And other than that, that Pakistan ranked as the second worst country in the world in terms of gender parity. So, such underwhelming results are descriptive of the unfortunate circumstances that women still experience within Pakistan, even within such disasters, too, because there is a lack of economic empowerment, and there is not any prominent leadership roles in the society, prominent leadership roles of women in the society. So I think that women suffers hugely with or without these disasters in Pakistan.
Right, Kainat, this question is for you. Are there like any checks and balances in place to ensure women in flood relief camps are protected against violence or abuse? Or if such a case arises, what can be practically done to bring the perpetrator to justice?
Okay, so I was looking at newspapers and I was going through few different NGOs, and they were claiming that they are working for the rights of the people affected in the flood affected areas. So what we can do is that we can bring that those who are doing wrong or doing such things to the courts or to the justice, but that is entirely different on the piece of paper, and practically the reality is very very different because in a situation like these, the women, they are very reluctant to report such incidences, and when you do not report, you do not get any relief from any authority because reporting or going to portray that issue as an issue first is mandatory, but unfortunately in Pakistan, the literacy or the awareness rate is very low. So people do not usually go to report that incidences, even in the normal scenarios, let alone in the flood or in disasters. So I think that first step is that we should bring or we should create a pool of awareness within these women who get victimized or who are being, a part of such abuse. So awareness is the key. We should aware such women as much as we can so that they can bring reports to the authorities.
Right. Zainab, I have another question for you. We have seen all these, headlines with saying climate change has brought on this disaster, but a lot of experts also believe that a certain degree of human mismanagement is involved. How much of the devastation would you attribute to climate change, and how much to causes that could be circumvented or prevented?
I think that's a very pertinent question. So basically, why it's attributed to climate change, just giving you a little perspective of that. So basically, what happens in every summer is that there is a shift in the wind patterns, which draws the air towards the South Asian region, which causes the rainfall over the region. And that's like again the time where we call it like monsoon. And then, but this year, Pakistan has received like nearly 190% more rain than if we see back and at the 30 years of average, right? So definitely it is attributed to I would say the ill practices of the urban management, but definitely a huge part is attributed to the climate change because when we say that global warming is increasing, the glaciers are melting, it causes GLOFs, glacial lake outburst floods, which ultimately causes the flooding, right? When we again talk about the urban flooding, and when we say that okay, perhaps it a little part is attributed to the human mismanagement. If we see in the northern part specifically, the the glacial I would say outburst has majorly causes the devastation. So largely the global phenomena of climate change, we can say that it is contributing its major part to the change in the monsoon patterns around the world, and its impact are like most prevalent in the South Asian countries and specifically in Pakistan. And that's how we see Pakistan being continuously ranked among the top 10 countries which are being affected by the climate change.
Right. And other question for both of you: what can be done in long or short term to make rural women better prepared for future disasters such as this one?
Maybe if I could go first,
Yes,
then
sure,
I
sure,
think
sure.
there are definitely some really good international practices that we can implement in our countries when we talk about empowering women with regards to the disaster management and better disaster response. Again, I will reflect back to your first question of how women are disproportionately impacted by the impacts of climate change. Again, if we link it with our social fabric and how our society operates culturally and traditionally, I think it's very important that we engage women in information and in awareness regarding such climate disasters based on the community based engagement plans. Because again, women are like reluctant to come out of their houses, or maybe they are reluctant to invite such practitioners to their homes. But when we organize such activities at the community level, I think the chances of their involvement increases comparatively. Then again, it's very important that we relay this information in the local language, because language is an important barrier which impacts. Even if we see such awareness campaigns on our national media, there are minimum campaigns or almost no campaigns with regards to the awareness. So it's very important to relay this information in their local language and in their local context. Because again, if a lady is working on her farm, supporting her husband and her family, and then coming back home doing her chores, she won't be interested in participating such awareness activities. So it's very important that we organize it in a way that we take community into account in these awareness activities. And then I think it's also very important to follow these practices that we call as like training the trainers, where you go to places, you train women on these awareness activities, and then these women who are their community leaders, they can further train other women on such disaster management practices, and then this cycle will continue. I think these are some pertinent cases that have worked for other countries, and that would definitely work for our countries if these activities are again implemented by the by the national authorities, by the pertinent authorities. We cannot name one. Definitely, it's a collective effort, and different organizations, be it public sector and be it private sector, they need to come together to help solve the climate crisis.
Uh, Kainat, are you still there? All
Yes,
right.
I am.
Yes. Same question for you.
I think that my fellow speaker has covered all the aspects of it. I would just like to add that we really need to develop culture of prevention and resilience, and along with that, we really need to build institutions and development policies and plans, which includes women as well, because the participation of women in such an issues where they are involved and their problems are involved, they should be a key stakeholder or key decision maker to put forward with the solutions, with the problems that they are facing, and that the solutions that they want to implement on the situation, on a problem. So the disaster management system should include women and their decisions and what they have to say. Their opinion or their voice should definitely have a weightage in the policy making, and that policy making really need to have a proactive or a culture that is of prevention rather than of cure.
Right. Involving women as stakeholders in such decision making brings us to our next question, which is how important is it to involve women as stakeholders in decision making? I think you guys have covered that part, but for rural communities, and how can the obstructing factors such as conservativeness that makes women almost inaccessible be overcome? Zainab, you can go first.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Again, it definitely links back to the previous question, but just to add a little more, I think to help women be the important stakeholder in the process, it's very important that we make it a bottom-up approach. Because if we are, kind of dictating it to the women, do this, do that, you are not trying to relate with their local circumstances. So it's very important that we ask women, those women who are impacted by such disaster or those who are vulnerable to such disasters, maybe because we also need this approach of mitigating the impact before the disaster happens, right? So it's very important that we involve them, ask them about their needs, consult them, again, consult the people who are directly impacted by this disaster, as we're talking about women particularly, so that we can make this whole process as a bottom up approach. And then also it's very important to empower them to communicate the right things, because usually when we talk about such disasters, people are very concerned about their economic conditions, because there is nothing about food when you are in such do and die situation. So they are not very interested in getting the knowledge or be involved in such climate, or I would say the disaster education thing. So it's very important that to have women as important stakeholder in the process, it's important to empower women to give the right education, right knowledge, and engage them in the process rather than just going to them and I would say dictating them to do XYZ things.
Kainat, could you just add some more to it? We can't hear you. Your mic is on mute.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, so I think that having both men and women involved in decision making really broadens the perspective, and it really increases the creativity and innovation. It also diversifies the pool of talents and competencies. And other than that, it reduces conflicts that arises afterwards, the policy or the laws or everything that has been made. And it also improves the process of decision making, because it really empowers, and it really makes a woman feel like that she also has a voice, and she can really voice her opinion and voice her concerns. But as to talk about the rural women, I think that the situation of rural women as compared to the urban women is very, very is tough, because they are less likely to be wage earners, and they are less, I mean, they are not really employed. They are usually involved in unpaid jobs with long working hours and poor working conditions, and they also have limited social protection. So, in order to increase their decision making in the policy level, or even at the lower level, we really need to work to empower these women, to empower these rural women through their financial independence. So, financial independence is very important. As soon as we will financially empower them, they will be able to voice their opinion in a way that it should be, or they will be valued like they has to be valued.
Right. Another question, Zainab. This question is for you. If you, could you shed light on some gender-specific methods of disaster communication and how we can apply them here in Pakistan?
Okay, so to an extent, I try to communicate it through again some of my previous points. So when we talk about again gender-specific methods for disaster communication, it's very important that we relate to the people and try to convey the information in their local context and circumstances. Again, language is an important thing, especially for women. If we talk about, it's important that we consider their socio-economic status in the society when we are trying to take them as a stakeholder in the process, and especially with regards to the disaster communication thing, because again, you are trying to involve in the process where they feel empowered and they are able to meaningfully add to whatever circumstances or whatever disaster they are facing. Then again, as my fellow others co-speaker has also mentioned, that it's very important to look into the economic, I would say, the economic position of women in their families and um, in their social fabric. When we are talking about the communication of gender specific methods, it's very important to also think about linking these methods in a way that are adding to the economic well-being of women in a way that perhaps these trainings could provide some incentives to women with regards to, like, again, their I would say a financial stability. We can introduce such small incentives to women with regards to some added trainings or something like that, so they are interested in such disaster methodologies or disaster communication practices. And then again, for the gender, when we talk about, like, again, women, it's very important that we consider the topics are that are pushing women towards the marginalization. For example, the menstrual hygiene of women is taken as a taboo in society. And then when we talk about disaster management, this issue is, like, again, neglected, and it's considered as something that's very alien topic to people. So it's very important that when we are trying to communicate the disaster management practices to women, or be it men, it's very important to be sensitive about these issues that only women are facing, because maybe men cannot relate with it because they are not prone to this, but it's very important to include these small things. It's important to consider that how a lactating woman will deal with such disasters, because if you are giving awareness or education about, let's say, floods to people, the disaster preparedness of a woman versus men, or maybe a young girl versus a young boy, would be very different. So we need to, include these small practices in these disaster communication methods across the world, but specifically with regards to the, I would say, the rural regions.
Right. Well, that brings us to our Twitter hot takes analysis segment. I would read some tweets that were trending, and I would ask you guys some questions related to those tweets. So Beena Shah writes, "Funny how the environment is an issue when it comes to sanitary products for women, not bottled water, bags and sacks of biscuits, plastic bottles, etc." Uh, so backlash mostly by men against sanitary products being included in relief packages. What can be done to educate masses on this? Kainat, you can go first.
Okay, I think that people really need to understand this, that this is our basic necessity and this is not any kind of luxury or something that which is, out of the equation. This is a part of our daily needs. So people really need an awareness on a topic of importance like this. So awareness is a key. We need to aware people on a lot of different things, and this is one very important thing that people need to know, that this is not luxury. I am repeating that, and I am asserting that this is not any luxury. This is a necessity, basic necessity of a woman, to have a pad or to have a sanitary kit, sanitary kits uh, in her daily life. So we really need to aware people on very very concerning and serious topic. I think that's all for now, because as much as awareness is needed, people needs to be sensitized to this topic, that the menstrual hygiene or reproductive health rights are something that a woman borns with. So stop kidding with it, stop messing with it. Rather, you people really need to be sensitized and be aware about the situation of a woman.
Right. Zainab, if you could add something to it.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with it, and it's again a very sensitive topic, and it's very insensitive of those people who, pass such comments on such, I would say, very very sensitive thing for a woman particularly. Um, it's again, having access to sanitary products is not something that's luxury. That's definitely a need. And when there was a lot of debate definitely on Twitter about why these sanitary pads are being provided to women and why not food, and we should prioritize other things that are essential for the survival. Definitely, these things are important, but again, for a woman myself, I think that's a matter of your dignity, and it's not something that you are taking as a luxury in such vulnerable condition, but rather something that is saving you from being humiliated in front of masses, or probably in front of your family. So where there are a lot of critiques who are talking about these issues, I think at this point the debate should not be about what to provide, rather than about something to provide these women to cope up in such situation, because these women are not just sticking at one place. They are probably migrating from one place to another, and they don't even have shelter. Maybe they are living around the tents around the roadside. So definitely, the management, the disposal of such products is something that is very critical to look into in the post disaster scenario. And definitely there are such practices that these things could be managed, but I think the awareness and through right advocacy of how these things could be used, because there are a lot of women who are probably not accustomed to using such products, because they are more dependent on the traditional methods of dealing with such things. But I think advocacy, awareness, and education is something that we can promote. And definitely for this, we need more women relief workers in the fields, in the ground, so that they can communicate these things with a woman. But definitely the debate is not about providing XYZ thing to these women, but rather about providing something that these women can use in this such critical time.
Another tweet by Claudia Webb. She says Pakistan had the hottest city on earth, Jekbabad, at 51 degrees Celsius in May 2022. It experienced forest fires, melting glaciers, and now has the worst floods in living memory. It's at the epicenter of climate catastrophe. Cancel the debt, give Pakistan climate compensation now. This is for both of you. Do you think Pakistan is entitled to climate compensation? And although the concept is just, how can fair compensation be quantified? Kainat, you can go first.
I think that the countries of which we are affected by should really compensate Pakistan for the disasters which Pakistan itself is not responsible for. And they should, it is a high time that they should come up and they should provide relief to the people who have been devastated by the effects of the floods or by the effects of the climate change in general. So yes, I think that I go highly with this tweet, and I support whatever was in this tweet, that Pakistan itself is not responsible for the damages that it is facing right now at this time of
Zainab, would you like to add something?
Yeah, sure. So basically, the concept of climate compensation or climate reparation basically links back to 2013, when there was, initially the debate was started in the Warsaw International Mechanism on Loss and Damage, and recently, it was again at COP. It was a major loss and damage fund was a major topic of discussion, and it was supported largely by the global south countries. And definitely, I think this is something that's very pertinent, because when we talk about the global warming thing, Pakistan is contributing very less amount or proportion into that, I would say. And it is not just something that we are saying on our own. There is a well-established scientific evidence for that, and definitely we need to establish a loss and damage fund for the developing countries. And specifically when we talk about Pakistan, I think it is our due right. We are not asking for any aid, because definitely this climate change is not something that we are doing. If we see the facts, if we see the scientific evidence, we are not the major contributor. And definitely the industrialized nations, or so to say the global north, should definitely come together and establish a loss and damage facility. Though the Glasgow dialogue is going on, and we hope that we will have something by June 2024. That is the timeline for this dialogue. But definitely before that, as we are saying, the catastrophic impacts of climate change, I think we cannot wait till 2024 to get the final result, which is also not very definite whether it will be positive or whether it will be negative. So that, I think, that's a very due right of Pakistan to ask for the climate reparations from the global community. And I think it's something that is not, or maybe I would say that's like a moral responsibility, or least that these developing countries could do in this such critical condition.
Abira Ashfaq writes, exhausted by Westerners who want assurances their flood donations will not be lost in corruption while we subsidize their carbon footprints and cut subsidies for our working poor just to pay back their loans, which they are only able to give back because of colonization that continues. Um, the concept of climate colonialism is popular on Twitter and also with some climate scientists. Do you agree it exists? And what can be done to address it on a diplomatic level? Kainat, this one's for you. I think Kainat is not there. Zainab, if you can add something to it.
Yeah, sure. So that's like a highly, I would say, politicized topic. But definitely, I think colonialism is something that people have been facing in the past, and that has taken a form of violence. So it's very important that we start, discussing the climate colonialism in our negotiations and climate diplomacy practices. And it's very crucial topic to address, because you must have seen, different technological interventions, so to say, or I would say different activities under the name of mitigating or adapting to climate change. There have been some carbon offsetting activities, or we also talk about the carbon capture techniques and stuff like that. But it's very important that we look into how we are regulating these issues. Recently, the Paris Agreement was operationalized after setting the rules for the carbon credits, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. But again, it's very important to ensure transparency and also the accountability on such mechanisms, because if we don't regulate these mechanisms, especially in such countries where corruption and such issues, operational issues are very pertinent, there's a huge chance that these things would have like negative impact, and we cannot implement these practices in their true sense if regulation is not there. So definitely colonialism is something that is used by some countries under the wake of climate activism or climate advocacy, but it needs to be regularized and it needs a proper transparency mechanism to address.
Kainat, are you still there with us? I think Kainat is not there with us. So I'll move on to another tweet. Anam Khalid Parvez tweets, I'm entirely frustrated by relief organizers' poor coordination of sending their relief. Because of this, many peripheries are still deprived before managing. Please allocate your area at first. If media has shown you some areas, that doesn't mean other areas ain't affected. How does the hierarchy of relief efforts work? Is there a real time system to monitor the allocations of resources, or any other method of reporting or to ensure transparency? If not, how can we introduce it?
Yeah, I think that is something that stands very pertinent and a question mark for the government as of now. Even if when I don't target the government, I think it's something that public sector can collaborate and public private partnerships can come into place with this. And unfortunately, we don't have any method or dashboard to keep track of the aid or allocation of resources or relief activities for any particular area. Though some journalists have reported the aid coming into Pakistan through the number of flights that have landed in Pakistan. There are, I think, around 60 plus flights. That accounts for like 4 and 8. And UAE and Turkey are like two major funders for that. Other than that, we don't have any mechanism, and definitely it's very important to have such database so that we can use it as as a reference for the future studies and future analysis, and it would help us to prepare and to better adapt as per the planning perspective of floods or perhaps other disasters too. And you have also asked about the levels of relief activities, right? So there are, I think, I would say, a standard method of carrying out the relief activities. First, there is a rescue, then there is a relief, then there is mitigation, and then there is preparedness. But I think mitigation and preparedness is something that is completely absent from our dealing of these disasters, and that definitely NDMA needs to look into, being the federal operating body that operates under the Act of 2010. and then they can again work with provincial disaster management authorities, and then translate down to the district management. So this is something I think that we could use as a way forward for our preparation for the upcoming disasters, because climate change is definitely not going to end here, and it's going to have like more catastrophic impact. So we need to be better prepared with the better information and better experiences.
Right. Well, that brings us to the end of our session. We'll take some comments, questions from our Facebook comment section. Um, we have one question. Aliza Rizwan Hashmi is asking, what are some practical ways to address the hesitation or fear women have in reporting incidents of abuse, especially rural residents who are at the mercy of flood camp officials?
Yeah, but I think some practical ways to address the hesitation is again to have this sense of safety. If we cannot promote, if someone is coming to you and wants to report a case, being an anonymous person, because definitely they are already and going through such mental stress, and they don't want an additional headache. So I think that is something we need to respect their privacy. And again, we are in 21st century, but again these things are I would say dealt as a taboo in our society, though it's not about privilege or something like that, but we do associate these things till date with such social taboos. So it's very very important that we maintain the privacy of these reporters, and then again try to make sure that we reach out to these people who are at the verge of more, I would say, abuse, or who are more prone to such conditions.
Another question by Sami Farooq. Sami asks, given that floods have disrupted major infrastructure in most inundated areas, what are the major issues women are going to face that you feel are needed to be paid attention immediately, especially when we talk about this under the human mismanagement?
I think again, the we have almost highlighted major issues, but definitely, I think mental health is something that is not tangible to us, and that is definitely not under the highlight. So for women, especially when we talk about like human mismanagement, this is something that women, when we talk about again that women are more disproportionately impacted by the impacts of climate change, definitely is something that we need to consider. And there should be such advocacy sessions given to women, and especially young girls who go through such circumstances under such fragile age. Other than that, there are again a lot of topics that we need to address after in the post rehabilitation time. Perhaps the sanitary, I think, hygiene is something that is another topic that needs to be addressed. We can perhaps go interview these women and learn from their experiences, so that we are better able to address these issues that are not on the mainstream media, or that are not so frequently talked about. I think these are a few things that go unnoticed, but they definitely need attention from media as well as from the other stakeholders as a whole.
Uh, Last question from our Facebook comment section. Abdul Ahad Hashmi asks, how can we build public confidence in donating for flood relief when every day there is a new story of donations being hoarded by local MPAs?
Yeah, I think that's the story of every other relief activity in the developing countries. Definitely, this is something that needs to be regularized by the government, being the major stakeholder. But there have been some local players that have done a tremendous job there are different, I would say, relief activities going on. Just to name a few, maybe I was going through a vlogger, a vlog by a very renowned blogger. Maybe I won't take name, but they mentioned that they have done their massive relief activity through Al Khidmat Foundation, and there are a lot of other, foundations and social workers working on such, donation and drives, and they have like a complete database of people, and they are trying to keep track of the aid that has been given to those places. So they pinpoint those areas that have their particular needs, and then they try to divert those particular donations needed by the local communities to those particular areas. For example, there were some communities that needed tents on urgent basis, so they were providing tents to those people who needed that. And then there were some those families which needed some ration and stuff, so they were providing those to them. So again, I think if you think that local government is not doing their part, or if you are not very satisfied with them, it is good that you go to you volunteer for work, and you go to these places and see how they are operating, how these local organizations are operating. And it's better that you also contribute through volunteer work, and then you will be better able to decide and be confident on how these things are being carried out by these locally organized groups. But definitely, I think it's an important part of question of how we can build a public confidence in donations. I think again, this is something that you can engage as a young people. I think you can make the best use of social media. If you're going to a place, you see a positive impact, then it's very important that you endorse it through the right medium. And social media is a huge tool for the advocacy, and you can definitely communicate to your peers, to your network, to the society, of how these organizations are working in a true sense to help people.
Right. That brings us to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for joining in, Zainab. Unfortunately, the Kainat could not stay connected with us due to internet instability. And thank you very much for such an insightful discussion.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It was lovely talking to you on such a crucial topic. There was definitely a lot of information that still needs to be addressed, but
Yes,
definitely we need
definitely.
to keep such discussions going on so that we can have this knowledge exchange.
Thank you so much, Zainab.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. So that brings us to the end of our session. I hope you guys had some insightful look into this entire problem, and we'll see you in next webinar. Have a great day.